How's it going? So today on BKRsport, we are back for part number 2 of this series. We are reacting to The Last Dance, a documentary about the Chicago Bulls of the 1997-98 season, and obviously Michael Jordan, because you can't have a documentary about the Chicago Bulls without Michael Jordan. But this also does focus a lot of the other players on at the time. If you didn't, grow up in those times, like myself, I was born in 1994, so when this was happening, I was only 4 or 5 years old and growing up in Australia, so I have absolutely no idea. And that's why this series is so good. That's why this series is so good, because it gives an in-depth look into the Chicago Bulls of the 90s, who won 6 titles in 8 years. That is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I obviously went and did a part 1 reaction, so if you haven't checked that one out yet, go and check that one out before we do the second one. We're also going to be reacting to every single episode. From what I've seen, the first one kind of gave an in-depth look into, the thought process of how it was looking like it was going to be, like the preseason thought process, and this one is really relating to Scottie Pippen. From what I've seen, episode 3 is about Denis Rodman, and it's really doing an in-depth look into the specific players and their specific situations, and why the season eventuated as it did, and how the season kind of had its problems and had its difficulties before even coming onto the court. Because that's the thing, there are so many difficulties before even coming onto the court. And like I said in the first video, it's all about the organizational structure rather than the actual on-the-court phase that we all can see, that we all get to see. But this documentary is really good to get to know how it works behind the scenes of the NBA, behind the scenes of a winning team, and teams that are deciding to go into a rebuilding stage, and kind of the thought process and the difficulties that come with that. There is a lot of problems. It's not as simple as go out there and win the game, or it's not as simple as, you've got a contract, go out there and play. Because as we see in episode 2, Scottie Pippen's contract plays very heavily into the mind games that go on behind the scenes in regards to injuries, or in regards to, your care factor for actually winning. So enough talking here, and let's start reacting to episode number 2 of The Last Dance. The feeling that I'm getting from this series so far is that it's basically all Jerry Krause's fault, and I would assume that that's probably right from what I am seeing. However, there is no real second side of the story. I guess they do keep saying that he meant well and his intentions were well, and I can kind of see that he actually intended and he wanted the Chicago Bulls to dominate and to actually do well as an organization. And he was really focusing on the fact that, it's not Michael Jordan necessarily, it's not Scottie Pippen necessarily, it's not the Bulls necessarily, it's the organization structure behind the actual success. Not necessarily the players, even though the players are part of the organization, but the players get a lot bigger of a rap than they probably deserve to. And I feel like that's what Jerry Krause was trying to allude to. And I can understand what he's trying to say, but in the same sense, no. I guess if you want to look at it on a technical basis, you're probably right. But outside of a technical basis, I don't know if you can undervalue the players aspect. I don't know if you can undervalue the Jordan aspect. It's just as simple as that. So when I say I don't know Jerry Krause, I don't really know Jerry Krause, and I'm literally basing it off what this documentary is providing. My question from what I'm saying is, was it his fault that the Bulls failed after this? Was it his fault that the Bulls fell apart after the 97-98 season, and is that why they haven't won since? They haven't won since, and obviously Phil Jackson, who, as we mentioned in episode 1, basically was sacked before the season started, and was said, this is the last dance, go out there and do your best because you won't be here next year. And obviously he went on to be very successful in LA as well with Kobe. So if it wasn't for Krause, because the Chicago Bulls have kept going, would they have continued to dominate? Would they have continued to be successful? And as we find out in this episode, Scottie Pippen, the second best player in the team, one of the best players of all time, honestly, was still one of the best players of all time. Jerry Krause obviously really affected that relationship that Scottie Pippen had with the Bulls and the care factor that he had, and obviously he felt that he deserved a high contract, and I think it's pretty obvious that he did deserve a high contract. When you've got a player who's got your second in scoring, second in rebounds, first in assists, second in minutes played, and first in steals, but he's the 6th highest player on your salary in the Chicago Bulls, your salary, there's a problem there. That's a massive problem. When someone has got all those statistics and they're rated the 6th best player on the team financially, contractually. It doesn't really make sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense. And seeing Krause clearly just not care about the unhappiness of his second best player, it was really shocking. It really was shocking. And I guarantee for Chicago Bulls back then, fans back then, and now, and just NBA fans back then, it would have been a surprise. I guess the organization wanted to stand strong on a contract that was signed, and it was done in a time where kind of Pippen thought that it was good, I guess. But I'm going to make a comparison here. You've got to throw in inflation. You've got to include inflation throughout the time. Scottie Pippen earned $18 million over 7 years with the Bulls. Over 7 years. Now that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. The type of player he was, and being the 6th highest on the salary, that's not high enough. Now in comparison, Luol Deng played for the Lakers. If you don't know who that is, then I wouldn't be surprised. He played like 13 games for the Lakers. He earned $18 million in a year. 1 year. Played 13 games. Like I said, inflation is obviously something that you do have to include. However, $18 million over 1 year compared to $18 million over 7 years. One was the second best player of the team who just won 5 years in their past 7. And one is a guy who played 13 games. So it's like, it doesn't really, not only this, but Scottie Pippen was also the 122nd highest paid NBA player at the time. That's crazy that 121 other people were receiving a higher paid salary than Scottie Pippen. Like I said, he was the second best player at the time in the Chicago Bulls, and they just won 5 out of the past 7 years. And they went on to win 6 out of the past 8 years. And yet this guy went, that's just, it's ludicrous, mate. It really is ludicrous. It was obviously the Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman, and it just wasn't, I think everyone at the Bulls wanted the contract adjusted. I feel like everyone did want Pippen to get what he deserved. However, obviously they don't really have a say. They didn't really have a say compared to Jerry Krause in regards to that matter. This definitely did affect the Bulls because, you know, Scottie Pippen decided instead of doing his surgery or whatnot at the end of the season, at the beginning of the off-season, he decided to wait until the end of the off-season because, look, he just didn't really care about coming back and playing, to be honest, because he wasn't earning the money that he felt that he deserved and that he rightfully did deserve. So he didn't want to miss out on the summer. He didn't want to miss out on having his fun. So he waited to take his surgery, and it is what it is. I obviously don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think anyone really agrees with it. You can understand the thought process behind it, but I don't think anyone really necessarily agrees with it. And this ticked Michael Jordan off quite convincingly. Like, it really did tick him off because obviously he wants to win, and they did really struggle at the beginning of the season. I just feel like a young brain was taken advantage of, and especially with his situation, he obviously just wanted to earn the cash to be able to provide for his family, and he did. You know, it is still a significant amount of money, but for the work that he put in, the amount of quality he provides, and to be given that $18 million over 7 years is pretty mad. It's pretty mad. But like I was saying, Michael just really didn't appreciate this, and I guess because of the significant losses they were receiving at the beginning of the season, because of their difficulties they were finding, he really took it out on the team, and you could see that he really started to hammer it into the team in trainings. And fair enough, really. It's fair enough, really. He needs someone to back him up. He needs someone to help him out, and without Scottie Pippen there, he was finding it increasingly difficult. And unfortunately, yeah, the results were showing. But it was also good to see Phil Jackson was so understanding. It was also good to see Phil Jackson really had a player's perspective, and I guess that's why he was so successful as an NBA coach, whether it be with the Chicago Bulls, the Lakers. I guess that's why he was so successful, because he had a player's perspective. You know, he did previously play before he became a coach, and he obviously knows what it's like to be a player. But for a coach to have such a significant player's perspective as Phil Jackson did was obviously really welcoming for the team. And I want to throw this one out there, and I don't want to obviously get slaughtered for it, but at this point it's just like, without Pippen, Jordan couldn't get it over the line. Jordan couldn't do it. It kind of really enforces and backs up the fact that you do need a second-hand helper. You do need someone to back you up. And I know a lot of people say, well, Jordan went out and won those games on his own back. It's like, well, no, when Pippen wasn't there, he didn't win jack. You know, he wasn't doing well at all. He was obviously the best person in the team, but it just shows that it's not a one-team sport. No sport is, besides the individuals, there is no one-team sport. So even the great Michael Jordan needed somebody to help him in times to win games. However, they did revert back to 1986 and showed when Jordan had his breakout game, basically against Boston in the playoffs, with a 30-52 record, which is abysmal. The Bulls kind of basically limped in. Jordan was coming through. This was Jordan's time that he was starting to really build up his ranks and be the light of the Chicago Bulls organization. They got in there and they played the Boston Celtics, and although they lost, he went out and scored 63 points in a single game, and it just showed that he is a phenomenal player, and even without those backups like Scottie Pippen, but then again, he also still had Charles Oakley. He still had one of the greatest players of all time too. Oakley was a fantastic player, and although he was kind of pushed away to New York to really focus the team around Jordan and to create this team and build it around this star player, Charles Oakley is still a fantastic player. So it's like, it did reinforce the fact that Jordan was a fantastic and unreal individual player, that despite they lost the game, they lost the playoffs against Boston, who had Larry Bird and 4 Hall of Famers in their team, or 63 points in a single game. You know, it's unreal. It really is unreal. So when I say what I say about the fact that you need somebody else, you do need that extra help from a player like Scottie Pippen. And that's why it's so disappointing that he just wasn't appreciated as much as he deserved. And I guess he is appreciated now as the Robin to the Batman, but it's like he is very significant to Jordan's history. He is very significant to the amount of titles that the Chicago Bulls won, and unfortunately he was very underappreciated in that organization at the time. And to finish this up, I just want to say, you know, the ending of that episode was so tense. You know, you could just feel the animosity in the air between Pippen and Krause. You could feel the animosity that Pippen had toward the Bulls, and you can completely understand. You can completely understand that perspective. I don't agree with the fact that he waited until after the summer, just before the season started, to go into his surgery, which would prolong his injury in the season and just not allow him to play. You know, that's not something that's cool, man. That's not cool. But in the same sense, you can understand his perspective from that, and you can understand why he actually went on to do that. And like I said, Phil Jackson is very aware of the player's perspective, and he understood it too. And I guess he somewhat agreed with it. He wasn't happy with it, obviously, but I guess he somewhat agreed with it because he was aware of the situation, and yeah, it was the perspective of Pippen was clear. Here's going to do it for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. If you do love these reaction kind of videos, don't forget to go down there, hit the subscribe button. If you are enjoying this content, please give it a big thumbs up. I've never really done these reaction type videos before, and this is a new series with the Chicago Bulls documentary, The Last Dance. I am thinking about doing the Sunderland one. If you guys have another documentary series that I haven't seen, or just another documentary series that you want me to react to, then definitely jump in the comments below and let me know after I finish this Last Dance series, which is still quite a few weeks away. After I finish this Last Dance series, I do want to keep up these reactions of these documentaries about different football teams and sporting teams around the world. So I'm definitely excited to get into more of that, and let me know in the comment section below which different sports you'd like to be seeing. Like I said, guys, if you're not a part of the BK Army yet, go down there, hit the subscribe button, and while you're there, hit little ding-a-ling-a-ling notification bell so you get notification every single time we upload. That is going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. See ya.